Introduction to the brain. The brain can be divided into three basic units: the forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain. Hindbrain, the oldest and most basic part of the brain, performing functions similar to our evolutionary ancestors. It includes the upper spinal cord, brainstem, and cerebellum. Brainstem connects the brain to the spinal cord and controls automatic functions. Medulla controls automatic functions like breathing and heartbeat. Pons coordinates movement and other automatic functions like sleep and arousal. Cerebellum, little brain, presents in all species with the brain. It helps with smooth, precise, coordinated movements, walking, talking, voluntary movement, reflex motor skills, nonverbal memory, and perception of time. Midbrain, the uppermost part of the brainstem, controlling reflex actions and involved in the control of eye movements and other voluntary movements. Forebrain, the largest and most highly developed part of the human brain, primarily consisting of the cerebrum and structures beneath it. Cerebrum, the outer layer of the cerebral cortex, gray matter, responsible for cognitive processes like learning, memory, and thinking, contains all the lobes. Hemispheres. The cerebrum is divided into two hemispheres, left and right. The myth of strict logic/creative separation has been disproven. Both sides work together. Corpus callosum, the sole connecting tissue between the left and right hemispheres, responsible for interhemispheric communication and coordinating sensory, motor, and cognitive functions. A general rule of thumb for brain development is that it proceeds from the bottom up. Functions originating in the brainstem, breathing, heartbeat, develop first, followed by motor skills regulated by the cerebellum, standing, walking, and finally complex tasks like logical decision-making, patience, and language development in the cerebrum. Neurons and neurotransmitters. Neurons, nerve cells that transmit messages to each other when stimulated by sensory input or other neurons. There are billions throughout the body, primarily in the brain. Parts of a neuron: cell body, dendrites, axon, myelin sheath, and terminal branches of the axon. Neural impulse, the electrical signal transmitted along a neuron. Neurotransmitters, chemical messengers released by neurons across a synapse to a receiving neuron. Examples include endorphins, pain and pleasure; norepinephrine, alertness and arousal; serotonin, mood, hunger, sleep, depression; dopamine, learning, movement, pleasure, addiction. The endocrine system, a system of glands that use hormones as chemical messengers directing the nervous system. Hormones travel through the bloodstream and are slower than neurons but have longer lasting effects. Adrenal gland secretes adrenaline, triggering the fight or flight response. Pancreas regulates blood sugar levels. Testicles/ovaries secrete sex hormones. Pituitary gland, the most influential gland, controlling growth, puberty, metabolism, and influencing other glands. The limbic system, hippocampus, a set of interconnected structures exclusive to mammals, separating the most primitive brain from higher cerebral clusters. Hippocampus, crucial for creating strong associations, especially with smell and memory, converting short-term memory to long-term memory, and recalling spatial relationships. Its main job are creating memories and learning. Amygdala integrates basic emotions with sensory input, matching sensations to emotions, memories, and fear. It evaluates emotional experiences by valence, positive/negative, and intensity, and contributes to the emotionally significant memories. Hypothalamus, the body's thermostat, regulating physical needs and governing the endocrine system. It controls body temperature, emotions, hunger, thirst, and circadian rhythms. Pituitary gland controls growth, puberty, and metabolism through hormones. The amygdala and hippocampus are closely connected to the medial temporal lobe, working together to create, store, and recall emotional memories. The amygdala processes the emotional intensity, while the hippocampus encodes the context and details. The cerebellum and cerebral cortex. Cerebrum makes up about 85% of the brain. The brain's weight and oversees thinking, speaking, and perception. It is made up of several lobes with specific functions. Cerebral cortex, the outer layer of the cerebrum where thinking occurs. Most folds, gyri, means more surface area and a more complex brain. It is responsible for sensory integration, critical thinking, decision-making, voluntary movement, language, reasoning, perception, and personality. Lobes of the cerebrum: frontal lobe, concentration, planning, problem-solving, personality, motor control, and speech. Partial lobe, body awareness, touch and pressure, taste, spatial relations, language, comprehension, and reading. Temporal lobe, hearing, smell, facial recognition, and language processing. Occipital lobe, vision. Neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is the nervous system's capacity to adapt and modify itself in response to experience. It describes the brain's ability to reorganize, strengthen, weaken, or form new neural connections due to learning, environmental influences, or injury. Types of neuroplasticity. Functional plasticity, the brain's ability to transfer functions from a damaged region to healthy and undamaged ones. If one part is injured, other areas may take over its functions. Structural plasticity, physical changes in the brain structure caused by learning and experience involving the formation of new neural connections of the strengthening of existing pathways. Adaptive neuroplasticity, a biological process enabling the brain to adapt after injury by restoring lost abilities and strengthening remaining functions. Developmental plasticity, alterations in neural pathways throughout development due to environmental interactions, learning, and experience. Neuroplasticity in development and learning. The brain changes due to stimulation and experience. Environmental interaction, early development, and learning all lead to new and strengthened and neural pathways. Stages of brain plasticity in infancy. Proliferation, rapid production of new neurons. Migration, movement of neurons to their correct locations. Circuit formation, establishment of connections between neurons to create functional pathways. Synaptic pruning, elimination of unused or weaker neural connections to strengthen important pathways. Myelation, development of a myelin sheath around axons to increase the speed and efficiency of neural communication. Overproduction of neurons. The brain overproduces neurons because it cannot predict which connections will be required. This overproduction allows for flexibility, with frequently used connection being strengthened and unused ones pruned, creating efficient and specialized neural networks. Brain development across lifespans. Age 3 to 6, most rapid growth in the frontal lobe involved in planning and organizing. Ages 6 to 12, most growth in the temporal and parietal lobes, language and spatial relations. Infancy, characterized by proliferation, migration, circuit formation, synaptic pruning, and myelation. Preschool years, example 3 years old, highest activity level at any age. Children are very active and need daily exercise. Adolescence, puberty to age 25, a second phase of brain development. Prefrontal cortex, under construction, impacting impulse control, decision-making, and judgment. This is why young children struggle with impulse control, as this area is not fully developed or myelinated. Amygdala versus prefrontal cortex. The amygdala processes faster than the prefrontal cortex, making teens more likely to act on emotion than logic. Synaptic exuberance, an overabundance of synapses is produced. Synaptic pruning, the number of connections is reduced and remaining ones are strengthened through experiences, use it or lose it. This process involves brain efficiency and learning. Reaction times improve in adolescence due to increased myelation, speeding up neural transmission. Examples of neuroplasticity in action: learning to read, using non-dominant hand, Wordle, trust walk, upper limb amputees, taxi drivers, stroke recovery. Autonomy of the brain. So at the top of the brain, on the left side, you have the frontal lobe, and I'm in the very top. Then in the middle-ish area on the top, you have the parietal lobe, and then on the very bottom, but not the bottom, it's just like the top of the bottom, occipital lobe, and then in between on the bottom, before the corpus callosum, you have the limbic lobe. And then after the limbic lobe, which is between frontal lobe and parietal lobe, like right below it, you have the corpus callosum, which is below the limbic lobe. And then below the corpus callosum, you have the thalamus, which is that weird little circle in the middle of the brain. And then on the left side of the thalamus, you have this tiny dot, tiny ball below two balls, which is the optic schistosoma. And then below, right beside the optic schistosoma, is this weird triangle-looking thing, which is called the hypothalamus. And then Right below the hypothalamus is those two balls, which is called the pituitary gland. And then right beside, on the little far right, beside the hypothalamus, is the mammillary body, which is a very tiny dot below the spinal cord area. And then right below the mammillary body is this large ball, which is the pons, and it's connected to the medulla oblongata part of the spinal cord, which is kind of the middle of the spinal cord. And then right below that is the actual spinal cord. And then right beside the medulla oblongata is the cerebellum. And then right above the cerebellum is the pineal gland. It's this very little dot that is near the thalamus. And also, brain. That's basically what you want to know. The cerebellum is like the weird tree-looking thing. Right above the tree-looking thing is the pineal gland and the occipital gland. Anyway, so cases. The Curious Case of Phineas Gage, 1948. Core concept, localization of brain function and the role of the frontal lobe in personality. Incident, a railroad construction forearm in Vermont. Gage survived a 3-foot-7-inch tamping iron passing through his left cheek behind the eye and out of the top of his skull. Brain area damaged, left frontal lobe, specifically the prefrontal cortex. Before versus after. Before, efficient, smart, businesslike, temperate. After, impulsive, disrespectful, profane, unable to follow plans, no longer Gage. So key takeaways: provided the first evidence that the frontal lobes are responsible for personality, decision-making, and social regulation. Showed that brain damage can drastically alter personality while keeping cognitive function, speech, memory intact. The case is a cornerstone of neuroscience and localization of function. Misconception alert: he did not become a gothic monster, but rather struggled with social inhibition. The adolescent brain. Core concept: the brain is not fully developed until mid to late 20s, approximately age 25, leading to risk-taking behavior. Developmental balance, the why. Limbic system, reward/emotion, develops earlier, acts fast. Prefrontal cortex, control/judgment, develops later, acts slowly. Key processes: synaptic pruning, use it or lose it. Brain removes unused connections to become faster, but this happens last in the prefrontal cortex. Myelination, while matter increases, speeding up communication between brain regions. Key takeaways: adolescents are more susceptible to peer influence and high-risk rewards, dopamine spikes. The brain is undergoing rewiring or pruning, not just growing in size. Frontal lobe maturity is delayed, which explains impulsivity. 3. Windows of opportunity, sensitive period. Core concept: times when the brain is exceptionally plastic and receptive to learning specific skills, use it or lose it applies. Sensitive versus critical periods. Critical periods, strict time frame, skill must be learned or it never will. Binocular vision, sensitive period, optimal time, easier to learn, but learning can occur later with more effort. Key windows: birth to age 5, sensory vision/hearing rapidly develops in the first 0 to 2 years, with windows up to 5 years. Language open until puberty, around 12 to 14, but highest proficiency is gained before age 7. Emotional control, birth to 4 years. Motor skills, early infancy. Key takeaways: plasticity, the brain is highly flexible and changes based on experience. Example, learning a musical instrument early. Experiences matter. Positive, enriching environments build stronger brain pathways. Missing these windows makes learning harder later, but not impossible.